We'd like to thank PCBWay.com for supporting our episode today. They aren't just about PCBs, but they do a tremendous job of that. They also offer CNC machining, sheet metal fabrication, 3D printing, and injection molding. If you're creating, then PCBWay.com can help you bring your project to life. Get an instant quote now over at PCBWay.com, and we thank them for their support. Hello Cave Dwellers, welcome into the cave. I'm joined by Richard from Heber today because we wanted to take the opportunity to update you on the MiSTer Multisystem. Now the MiSTer Multisystem, some of you will know, was a system that we partnered to create.
Indeed.
And it's our attempt to give an option to people who love the open source and wonderful MiSTer project, the option to use it in a consoleized form factor.
Yeah.
And it was a combination of an all-in-one board that we made and a 3D printed case to give you that console style experience. Now we announced that back in August last year. We started shipping at the end of September.
Yep.
It's only 6 months. It feels like a lot longer.
It does. There's been a lot of hard work to get to this point, but yeah, we've been shipping and we're going through revisions and refinements.
But we've really enjoyed it and we've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And we wanted to share some of those experiences with you today because for me, this is the first time I've partnered on such a project. So I've learned a lot along the way and Richard shared his experience. And we want to look ahead as well to some add-ons that we've created, which we're going to show you in action today. And beyond that, some of our plans and also invite your ideas for what you'd like to see in some of these add-ons. Now, let's talk about the demand, first of all, because when we created this thing, we thought we would have plenty with 500. That was the original batch. We thought that was a huge number.
That seemed a lot, especially with the difficulties getting hold of some of those components. It seemed like a lot to stretch out on because we were investing all of that up front and building everything before anyone really would place any orders. So, yeah. Yeah,
and that what you've just raised there about component issues is something that will probably come up time and time again in today's conversation. Those 500 sold out instantly, and that was on a pre-sale basis. And that we were both elated about that, and also not disappointed, but disappointed for you because we'd kind of made the promise that this is something that would be available and always in stock. And the demand was just so unexpected that it was immediately out of stock unless you got on that pre-order train.
Yeah, it was tough because we started buying the components in the February and we didn't actually ship until towards the end of the year. So for us, it was a long buying cycle, long manufacturing cycle, just to make sure everything was right, getting those key prototypes out to testers. So yeah, we thought we would sell a few hundred, and then have plenty to be able to work through over Christmas. And then Christmas ended up being really busy.
Yeah, Christmas really, we worked to the bone at Christmas, didn't we? You especially in the packing room and printing room. Mark and Dean down in the shipping area. They're down south in an area called Bournemouth where they do all the shipping. So we prepare everything here, it goes down to them for shipping. And everyone was just working all hours of the day to get those first 500 out. And we learned a lot of lessons in the processes of packing. We learnt lessons in the production of the cases, didn't we, to make that a bit more efficient?
Yeah, that was a really interesting journey because I made it as efficient for 3D printing as I could, knowing that we had printed about 40 cases, during the test cycle with a few machines, a few printers. And originally we were never sort of planning on producing them in volumes. That was the other thing. So we thought it was going to be fine for people to print their own and the test cases we had done. And it proved a little bit trickier just because of some of the challenges. Some of them were actually environmental. So it was getting into the winter season, everything was getting very cold, and that made printing a little tougher. You can have some thermal control in there, but it was adding to the extra stress of printing.
Yeah, we're in the loft space of an 18th century mill here, so you can imagine, insulation wasn't a thing when this was built.
And it was wide swings in temperature, which made it hard to keep everything stable. But yeah, we ploughed through it. And I think the big push was we didn't want to disappoint anyone that was in that first batch. So we were trying so hard to make sure everyone got what they ordered before Christmas, and we just about pulled it off. So.
Yeah. So in response to that, we came up with a new case for the second batch. We took on all of your feedback, as well as our own experiences you wanted to minimise waste from
Yes,
the print, didn't
very
you?
much,
And you've
yeah.
done that massively.
Yeah, it's been, we wanted to refine the print process, make it look a bit better, especially on the insides. It's not so much of a problem for people, but it's nice to know that it looks good inside as well. And that also reduced a lot of the wastage from the support material that was used. Because again, anything that's not printed and not wasted is a saving both for the materials and for the costs as well.
There's a whole video about that new case, so I'll put a link in the video description if you want to go and see the ins and outs of that case. So we won't dwell on it too much now, but suffice to say, a new case was developed for batch 2, and we are now at the point where we came up with another 500 for batch 2.
Yeah.
And they're sold out. So that demand continued, and once again, we found ourselves at a position where they're not in stock, and we really want to get into that in-stock situation. So as it stands right now, the boards are arriving. We've had about 200 off of you so far, and they continue to arrive. So the boards are being made and arriving. The printers are working flat out to produce the cases, and we have begun shipping. So all of the board-only orders for batch 2 have gone out. And then the board and case orders have now started shipping. So if you're waiting for one, you'll get an email notification to let you know when that's gone. So our priority right now is to get all of those batch 2 orders out.
Yep.
And then we come to what happens next. Now, there's not really going to be a batch 3, and I hope I don't have to eat my words in 6 months' time. Because we've gone all out and we've got a huge amount of stock coming in to be on an in-stock basis. As soon as that batch 2's gone, we're determined to remain in stock.
But both with the board and the case, hopefully.
With the board and the case. So we've ordered 1,000 boards for the next in-stock period. And hopefully they'll last. And as that stock begins to deplete, we can order more and always keep it in stock. And we've increased the size of the print farm. And we'll come on to the print farm a little bit later, because I'll give you a walk around of that to show you where it is now. And it's continuing to increase. We're just waiting on some more printers to arrive. So there's lots going on in those areas where I guess you could say we're scaling up really in response to the demand. Yeah,
we seem to have had printer deliveries every few weeks, and we've been adding to the farm. So it's got a point now where we've pretty much doubled the capacity that we had just before Christmas. Mm-hmm. And with the refinements in the case design and some optimizations of printing, we can still actually print more plastic faster than we could before. So the case is stronger, a bit chunkier, feels nice, and passes on the extra material that we would have wasted into the case to make it sort of a better, stronger design. Yeah. And we can still do that at about the same print schedule. So we managed to pass on very little of the extra costs that have been involved in sort of making those. Yeah. But there is one big issue hanging over anyone who's doing anything to do with MiSTer at the moment, and that is the availability of the DE10 nano boards. You have a better insight than I do into the availability, and I think you've approached Jurassic and had discussions with them. Yeah, we have. I mean, the fact we don't even have one on the bench in front of us is quite telling, really. We are really limited, the same as everyone else out there. There are some really big, difficult global challenges for scaling up of microcontrollers and processors and flash memories and FPGAs in specific sort of detail all around the world. So Jurassic, who make that evaluation board using an Intel FPGA, are really suffering from global shortages and general manufacturing delays and increases. We've had some very, very long lead times on components up to 2027, so it's not unusual to be told next year or the year after before you'll even get stock of microcontrollers and flash memories. Jurassic seem to be doing a good job of keeping them going, so they must have some stock. They must be getting stock through, and their manufacturing. We've heard from a lot of people who have contacted them directly and got direct sales of one-offs or few-offs. A lot of the shops have got very few DE10s in stock. I think Mauser has had constant orders there for probably 4 or 5 months now, and they don't seem to be being fulfilled. They're either cancelled or they're constantly delayed. So we got a shipment in just before Christmas of a batch to be able to do more testing, and then since then it seems to have been really tough this year to get hold of them in any volume. So that is difficult, and it is probably putting some pressure on people to source those, as long as, as well as ordering a multi-system.
Yeah. Anecdotally, from my side, people who have ordered with Mouser or DigiKey and then cancelled and then replaced an order with Thoracic, even though it says it's out of stock, sometimes they get them as quick as 3 or 4 days here in the UK. I'm not saying that's the case now, that's just what I've heard them saying over recent weeks, in fact. So they are out there.
Yeah. I think you will be paying quite a lot, though. I've heard stories of $260 plus fees of £40, £50 from DHL and places like that when they actually land in your country. So yeah, it's tough, and I hope that gets better, because the price did go up on the D10 a few times now. It was $100 a few years back, and then it's gone up to quite a lot more than that. But it is the platform of choice for the multi-system and the MiSTer project, so we have no choice at the moment.
Yeah, so plan ahead. If you're hoping to get the multi-system or any other MiSTer platform, for that matter, you need a DE10, so plan ahead. Now, those are the challenges that we've faced. Let's talk about some exciting things. Let's talk about the add-ons. So we've got some on the table here. We always promised that we'd make use of the expansion slot on the front of the MiSTer Multisystem to give you extra features. We went out and asked you what the most important things were to you, and the top 3 things that you gave us were a Pi add-on, with a view to doing all the things you can do with a Pi, but the most popular one being the MT32 Pi project, headed up by Dale, aka Dopefish, who does a great job with that. So we've come up with a Pi cartridge, and we've made it in such a way that you can use it with the MT32 software nicely. I'm planning on using it also with my barcode scanner, so we'll have a look at that in a moment.
Yep.
We had a lot of requests for, even though we've got the RGB SCART, the VGA style socket and the HDMI out on the multi-system, people asking for S-Video and composite, primarily over the pond in the US, because that's what you're nostalgic for. That is part and parcel of what your retro experience was. So who can blame you for wanting to recreate that? So that's our second cartridge. We'll address that. And then we've got some other developments beyond that. So let's look at those first. Let's look at the Pi one first of all. Here it is here. This is probably the final color or not the final color?
It could be the final color. Yeah, we've it's a good color that's available in the market, so we could choose it. But yeah, we were going for a sort of a Raspberry Pi look and feel for the cartridge. We wanted something a little different, which was compatible with the 3 main colors that we've got in the multi-system case. But yeah, you could obviously print your own in whatever color you like. But I think, as a starting point, we might ship those out in the nice red.
Yeah. So just talk us through what we've got here. What are the features of it?
So yeah, at the moment we've got a small little OLED screen, a Raspberry Pi 0W2, and a couple of buttons that you can allow you to press select some of the options on the MT32 or any other software you're running on the Pi. Inside there's actually a little expansion connector, and there's access to the USB that goes into the multi-system, so you can connect that back through to have some control over the Pi, which is quite nice. And then you can have some more extra I/O if you wish to use things like your scanner and other things. You've also got HDMI out and 2 USB ports on the top, so you could plug in peripherals and another screen there if you wanted the Pi to do something else.
So I could plug that into my multi-system, plug a monitor in and play some Retro Pi.
You could, you absolutely could. You could have another screen output and play some Retro Pi, yeah.
Now that's not the final design, is it? We've made some last minute tweaks before
production. We made a production prototype really just to go through some of the challenges. And again, getting hold of the Raspberry Pis, these little Pi 2W0s are very difficult to source. So we actually had to ask a few of the very friendly community members to send in some Pis we could use.
I must say
put
thank
on
you
there.
to them. Dave, Chrissy, Rich, Mark, all of the beta testers. Thank you very much for helping us out with this.
And these are your ones that we'll be coming back to as well, so you'll get those back soon. But yeah, we did the design, and we actually ended up putting a Pi 4 on here just to do some early testing, and we've tested it with Pi 4, Pi 3, and some of the smaller Pi 0s as well, and they all work fine. But that allowed us to at least tweak a few things, and if you see when it's plugged into the case, it's a little bit low, so all we've done is move the screen and the buttons up by about 3 millimeters And it just looks much nicer when it's all in there and sat and usable with the buttons and things. So we tried to make it as small as possible. We didn't want the cartridge to be too big, but it also needs to be a decent size to be able to plug in and take out. So it's generally styled on a Commodore 64 look and feel.
The final product will have a label on just to finish it off and make it look nice. And I think you've made provision for a different type of screen if you want, haven't you?
Yes, it would need a slightly different cover, but you could use the 4-line by sort of slightly square, chunkier display that you can also select. It's just one of the options in the Pi menus that you can just select as a different OLED.
Yeah. Now, we're going to make these available in the shop in about 8 weeks' time, as soon as they arrive. Now, because of the availability of the Raspberry Pis at the moment, the problems with that, we're going to make these available as a fully assembled board with the cartridge case and everything. It will just be missing the Raspberry Pi, won't it?
Yeah, so you'll have the 40-way connector soldered in. You'll just get your Raspberry Pi without the connector, drop that in and solder it in. So if you're up for the challenge and you're happy to solder in those connectors, the Pi onto the connector, then it will work and allow you to at least get going with it. We would really like to be able to get hold of these Pis, put them on and make that available as well.
As soon as they're available, we'll make it a complete kit. But it's a pretty straightforward task soldering on. We didn't want to put a connector on there because it would make the thing quite a bit larger, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you put a 2-way so you could plug it in, then that would really make it quite chunky. And once you've soldered it in, it's really then as a form, fit and function for that product. So you're not really going to be taking your Pi out. They are quite low cost. So I think soldering in and using it as a dedicated cartridge is a sensible thing really in this case.
Well, let's cut away now to an example of it running that MT32 Pi project. Just bear in mind that we're using the microphone on the camera here, but here it is running Monkey Island on the 486 PC core through MiSTer. So that's the first of our add-ons that we're hoping to bring to market for the multi-system, and I hope you like the look of it and you're thinking ahead to what you might do with it. Beyond the MT32 Pi and the barcode scanner, if you've got any other uses for a Pi in a MiSTer, I'd like to hear them because I'd like to try them out myself as well, so do let us know. Before we come on to our next add-on, it's probably worth mentioning that the development of these things has been accelerated and helped a huge amount by the fact that you've assigned a resource pretty much full time to the multi-system development, haven't you?
Yeah, certainly at the moment. We've got a dedicated engineer who's doing work as fast as we can put it in his pipeline to actually get these done. So yeah, Nick, our engineer here, is working really hard on accessories and developments for the multi-system. And as long as we can keep him filled up with ideas which come from you, then actually we can do more and more.
Yeah, so hopefully that's a reflection for you of just how seriously we're taking this project. We want to push harder and harder and bring out more and more add-ons and give you what you want. And we've got people like Nick, who you can see at his desk here, working away full time. All he's doing is coming up with more and more things for the multi-system. So let us know and we can maybe get him on the job of creating the things that you want. Now, the next add-on that I want to show you, I have to put my hands up and admit that I am responsible for the naming conventions. So have a go at me if you don't like them, but I love this name. This is the Super Video Custard. Richard, tell us all about it.
Okay, so the Super Video Custard is a dedicated hardware, S-Video and composite adapter for the MiSTer Multisystem. So this is one that we've been asked about for quite some time, and it was an interesting challenge because we wanted to do it as a hardware add-on and not fudged in software, which can be done, and some of the cores now are starting to see some composite outputs, but we really wanted to do it as a hardware add-on so it could be used in conjunction with a lot of the other display options available for the multisystem. So this, as it stands, allows you to just plug in and have both the audio left and right in phono sockets and the composite video, and also S-Video as well. We've got 2 switches on the front, which allow you to select PAL and NTSC. And actually on the design itself, we've gone to the trouble of putting on 2 dedicated crystals, both for PAL and NTSC frequencies. So they really lock on nice and tight, and you get a good signal there instead of just, you can do it in a cheaper way with only using one, but we wanted to do it really nicely with the 2 dedicated frequency oscillators on there. The other switch allows you to run the output of the composite video and S-Video and the RGB SCART or the VGA output.
And HDMI.
And HDMI, so yeah.
I'll be cutting back and forward here into a demonstration of this running. I'm kind of kicking myself because I only got it set up on 3 screens, and I could have set it up on 4 to really show it off to you. But what I've got is the composite and the S-Video going into the PVM on the end of the table there, and I'm switching between the sources so we can see the difference. But in essence, there you go. You can see we've got the SCART output in the middle, we've got the HDMI on the left, and we've got the S-Video showing on the right at this stage.
Yeah.
And it looks like S-Video, nice and crisp. Actually, I struggle to see the difference between the RGB SCART and the S-Video. Maybe a little bit of color depth difference, but it's very close. It's nice and sharp on the S-Video. If we switch over to the composite, yes, it does soften up because it's composite. It looks like composite.
It does, yeah.
And if we get really close in here, you can see this is Ghouls and Ghosts. This is S-Video showing. And then I'll switch over now to the composite. So if that softer composite look is what gives you those nostalgic feelings, then there you go. You've got it. You've got the option here, something slightly tidier in S-Video, or of course you can drop back to the HDMI or the RGB SCART. Just tell us your opinion on the quality of the picture from these, and are you happy with the output that you've achieved with this? Because a lot of people said that's quite a tricky thing to do.
Yeah, it is quite tricky, and we are using devices that would have been used, similar devices that would have been used back in the day. So we're doing hardware solution, but we're not using any frame buffers or anything like that. So this is a 0 lag delay on any of the processing of the video. So you're really passing that straight through. And we wanted to do that. It's got an analog devices part, which is a very nice part to use, but it gives you a good quality output, and that's the main thing. So it's sort of going to be I wouldn't say the best, but a very good quality, the sort of thing you would see on a very high-end system back in the day, you know, the laser discs of the day, and some of the really good quality computers and graphics cards and things like that had composite and S-Video out. So yeah, we're really happy with it, especially as a first-off prototype. This is a very first-off design, and came out all working with no issues at all, no interference and no problems. So
yeah, it's worth adding what you're seeing here hasn't actually gone into production yet. This is still prototype. So but I don't think there's anything to change at this point. We're pretty much there.
No, we're pretty happy. We did remove a couple of capacitors because they were causing some loading issues for some monitors that didn't detect the auto pickup on the signal from the plugging in. So we've removed a couple of those capacitors, but we actually planned for that. So they'll just be removed. And that allows a little bit more functionality and a little bit more scope on different monitors that we've chosen. But overall, I've got a lot of nostalgia for composite. There was a lot back in the day, 8 and 16-bit systems. I pretty much used composite throughout the whole of the 80s and 90s, so I really enjoy it and appreciate it for what it is. And I moved to Laserdisc platforms and things, so S-Video was another technology I really enjoy using. And then, of course, RGB sort of came in and ruined everything, and you can't really go back after that. But it does bring back some wonderful memories. So
I spent an awfully long time on RF. So
oh wow,
composite's
okay,
an upgrade.
yeah. I think there wasn't many I used on RF. Probably the MiSTer system. I think that was
And if you need any proof whatsoever about the lag on this thing, well, here I am playing Duck Hunt over both S-Video and Composite. It works on, and the light gun wouldn't work if the timing wasn't perfect on that thing. So there's as good a proof as I can give you.
And indeed, the prototype that we first started with is a very chunky connector cartridge, and that didn't actually work because it used some frame buffering and slowdown of the signal. So gave a pretty good picture and allows you to do some rescaling and things, but as a concept prototype, it just proves that we needed to do it the right way.
Can I just ask, you designed that one, didn't you?
Yeah, it was just a very quick concept to see whether or not the idea had legs, and people liked it. So
And did Nick design?
Yes,
the good
Nick
one?
designed a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Well done,
so,
Nick.
Yeah, well done, Nick.
And of course, the nice thing about this is that it's completely core independent. It doesn't need any special branched off cores or anything like that to make it work. Any settings? Do we need to change anything?
No, we don't need to change any settings. We've never needed to use the INI setting for composite. We don't need that on the SCART or on the composite or S-Video output. And you don't need any other settings other than what you would normally have, which is the frame buffer turned off and any of the upscaling. So as long as you've got the raw output on the analog video port, you'll get a perfect output on this.
Yeah, so it really is plug and play, essentially. Awesome. Yep. Now, before we go on to more add-ons and future plans, let's just take a break to have a look at the print farm, because that's evolved.
Yeah.
I've got some footage here of me just walking around the printers and seeing what we've got. Why don't you talk us through, how many printers have we got in there now?
I think we've got 16, or we're about to get 16. We've got another couple actually that should be here today. So we've got even more printers we're setting up right now. A lot of the main printers are the Prusa i3 Mark III S, and they're running the tops and bottoms. So they're running the base of the enclosure and the top section. Yeah, and so most of the panels as well, the back panels.
Yeah, so they're working in pairs, aren't they? So
they are.
Each pair will give us a case per working day, essentially.
Yes, yeah. The platforms, the build platforms are designed to print in around 8 hours. We've really pushed the speeds and the amount of material we're chunking out so we can do that in a day work shift. And the smaller printers are also planned to produce that, but they produce 5 times as much. So they produce 5 times the amount of all the small components we need.
And we had to harden the nozzles, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, we did. Yeah, that was one thing we were struggling with right up until the final days towards Christmas. Nozzles were wearing down and we were getting not reduced print quality, but you actually end up having more stringier support material, which takes even longer to remove. So it was a real double-edged sword from, okay, we can get more of these done, but it now takes 15 minutes to get them cleaned up, ready for people. So we moved to Nozzle X from E3D, which is a hardened steel nozzle with a special coating that's, I think it's got a lifetime guarantee, but that doesn't really mean lifetime. But it's got a very, very good long lifetime of usage on that. So yeah, we've already chunked through a few hundred sets and no signs of wear at all on that, where we would have worn out a whole set of nozzles by now.
Yeah, and the result of that is consistent printing.
Yes.
Which is really nice. How many failures so far on batch 2?
About 3
out
of a couple of hundred. So
I think any failures have come from running out of filament, really, at the wrong time.
Silly things, yeah, running out of filament at the wrong time and not being there to change it without, babysitting it, that sort of thing. And yeah, maybe a few troubled fingers were not getting it quite right on the first layer and things like that. So very silly mistakes, which you're going to make anyway. So,
And part of my job at the moment, every day I come in and I start the day by trimming off. There's a small amount that has to be trimmed off of the rear of the case. And then packing. So I put a case together, pack, I'll pair it up with a little bag of small 3D printed extras that you need. And then the bag of components, screws, things like that. Put it in the box. So if you've bought one of these, I will have packed it for you.
Yeah,
Every single one.
It is worth mentioning. We've both handled all of these parts that you'll be getting in this multi-system kit. So yeah, it's a nice thing to think it's actually a hand-finished product.
So when the printers turn up that we're just waiting on, the 2 more,
yeah,
I think that's it for a while, isn't it? That should keep
That's
us going.
it, yeah. We'll have a decent print farm then, like 16 or 18 or so machines that we can use constantly. They'll keep us very busy and produce pretty much to schedule what we need to get batch 2 out. And as you say, hopefully get ahead of batch 3 and make sure we've got those ready to be bought in the shop. And for anyone who wants to upgrade their case as well from batch 1, which you may be thinking about.
And on the subject of cases, while we're churning out all of these 3D printed cases, a really lovely thing happened, which was Ian over at MiSTer Joysticks contacted us. He's got one of these acrylic cutters, which he uses to produce his MiSTer Joysticks at MiSTerJoysticks.com with genuine Samware arcade parts. And he decided to cut a multi-system case, and we've got it here. You can have a look at it. He's still experimenting with colors. This is still very much a prototype. But his idea is to create a cheap alternative, although I think it looks quite classy, to the 3D printed cases. So if you don't want to go as far as buying one of our 3D printed cases and you quite like the open frame look, then this will be an option for you. And we're still working with him. We've given him some suggestions today to slightly improve the design, add some extra features, while keeping it cheap and simple. And if all goes to plan, we may well work with Ian to put that in our shop. And you'll be able to buy it at the same time as you buy a multi-system board, so you can save on your postage when you do that. So that could be a future option. I quite like it.
I do. It's very good. It's a nice different option, I think, from the 3D print case. So it's got a nice clean look to it, fits all our cartridges. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's quite a smart look. He's got little feet on the bottom as well, and you can still use the SCART connector and all of the front and back connections as well.
So apart from being a nice product, it's really nice that people have started to think about becoming a part of the multi-system ecosystem, I guess. Yeah. And if you've got any ideas, and if you're perhaps a small maker and you want to create something that would complement the multi-system, then just drop us an email, because we'd love to chat to you and help you with your design and put the word out there to help. Yeah,
we've been trying to reach out to anyone who's making interesting things for the MiSTer project and seeing if they want to make them compatible with the multi-system, if it's a mechanical issue, or electrically compatible if it's something that we could put into a cartridge that would also be useful. So yeah, that's really great.
So let's look ahead then beyond the cartridges, which are going to hit the shop soon. Let's look slightly longer term. Some of the things that we're working on include something called the slice, which you've got a few of them there. Now, in its most basic form, the slice is exactly what it says. It's a slice that sits under the MiSTer Multisystem and just gives you the space to use it as a project box and put whatever you want in there. Now, you've had some further ideas or what to put in there or to develop the slice. Just tell us what you're thinking with that.
Yeah, well, we've been thinking about what to do with the slice, because it's quite a large space. We could put some PCBs, you could put some electronics in there, you could put some expansion, all sorts of different things. And one of the next products that was on the list that we asked you about was JAMMA. And it made a lot more sense, really, to think about JAMMA as a separate dock, if you like. So you would put one of these inside your arcade cabinet or your arcade system, or anything that you've got set up that you may want to run MiSTer in. You could put one of these slices in and then drop your multi-system on top, make a quick connection through the cartridge port, and actually then have all of the JAMMA, all of the I/O, all of the things in there, extra audio, that side of things, and the kick harnesses and things for Street Fighter and all the others that need a few more buttons. So I think that's what we're going to do. So we did do a few concept mock-ups late last year for JAMMA as a cartridge, but it's starting to get quite ugly. So I think, it's going to look a lot better as a slice and make a lot more sense, because you can fit that into your arcade machine, into your cocktail cabinet, that sort of thing, and just then not have the multi-system dedicated to that one system. You can move it around and easily connect.
Yeah, or it doesn't even necessarily have to go inside the arcade machine. You could perhaps hang it on the back with some
on the top, on the back. Yeah,
hang it on there, and then the multi-system itself retains its console form factor. So you just dock it on and then take it off and walk off with your console to play it in your living room. So that's the place we want to get to with it. Still very much in development. As we said, it was the third most popular thing that you wanted, so we are working on that.
Yeah, but that's the sort of line we're taking with expansion I/O that requires a lot more space than just can be fitted onto a cartridge. So you're going to start seeing some of those being talked about later on this year with some other plans we've got as well.
Yeah. In terms of component availability and shortages and things like that, do you foresee that holding back any of the JAMMA development, or is that?
Probably not the JAMMA development. Some of the other longer term plans we've got, we're literally trying to work out what microcontrollers to use, what you can actually buy in the marketplace. Can we get hold of enough of them to justify laying out a board? Because it really is at the point of you're doing a schematic design now and you're only deciding to put the board layout when you've got the microcontrollers or the memory or whatever else in stock. If you design something with an audio DAC in, there's no point designing the board unless you've physically got the stock. It really is down to that. So we are in a chicken and egg situation of if we can secure enough of the stock and we think that we can buy then more and more, or at least have, even if it's a longer lead time, get the ball rolling, then we'll design something. Otherwise it stays as a schematic, and that's sort of, you're in development hell a little there. But yeah, we are trying very hard to make sure we minimize component issues.
So it's pretty much turned on the design of electronics turned on its head. The approach
Absolutely,
that you take, not just for the multi-system, but for everything that Hebert do.
Yeah, it really is. We've had customers wanting design changes, but what do you change to if you can't get anything that's alternative? If it's a single source, you really are, in a tricky situation. But we're approaching design now of how many do you want this year, or how many do you want for the next 18 months? It is as long as that sometimes. And then if we can secure that stock, we'll do the design, because you have approvals, regulations, other things to go through in a lot of industries, and that's something that requires thought and planning before you go to that laying out of a board.
Yeah. So the slice then we would say is probably a medium-term project that we're working on.
Yeah.
Let's look much further ahead to the future, and let's imagine a world where DE10s are freely available.
Yes. Yes.
Now, you have been thinking about that, and you have been prototyping a couple of examples that we've got on the desk here. So just talk us through what this is and the journey of the development of it so far.
Yeah, sure. Well, the idea always to have something in a portable form factor has been kicking around for a long time, really since the early days of MiSTer and other form factors that came out with Raspberry Pis and everything else. But the MiSTer project is very unique because it's got that sort of pick up and play form factor, and something that would lend itself quite nicely to a portable handheld system. So back in 2020, just as we were sort of going into lockdown, having all sorts of problems, I designed this as a very clunky first idea prototype, and worked out a few of the problems there of putting batteries in. This has got a full DE10 system in, so it's a little bit chunky, a little bit clunky to use, but it allowed me to play around with some ideas of using a 16:9 screen and having a little 4:3 snap-on, so you can do that sort of thing, and refine some of the button placements and overall sort of ergonomics and usability. The D-pad and generally the controls, the buttons, the feel. D-pad is going to be one of those things that everyone's got a slight different opinion on. Too spongy, doesn't fit quite right, not good for speed runs. We've had all sorts of different feedbacks, but it's not from want of trying. A 3D printed D-pad is not an easy thing to do. There's some of the tight tolerances, making it fit, working with the different button choices. So yeah, here's just an example of some of the D-pads I tried over the course of the project. This was just really back in the early days, some with springs, some's got a tiny bearing on the back so allow you to get some nice rocking motion, and yeah, all sorts of different things. In the end, I opted for a fairly simple design on the version 2, the rounded version, and actually I almost cheated on this version because I've gone for an off-the-shelf third-party PS2 style controller, but it does feel really nice and it does actually work really, really well. So yeah, the buttons could do with a little bit more refinement maybe, but I'm quite happy with that as a D-pad for the prototype. Yeah. Yes, there's a long way to go before we'd actually implement that in production, but yeah, there has been some thought there. So this is a little bit more slimline, worked out some of the issues with the cooling. So this has got a heat spreader, which basically takes all the heat and takes it out the back, which is quite nice as a cooling system, and still works.
It's not going to burn your fingers on it though.
No. See, they really don't get that hot. People always get a little carried away with how much heat these things generate, and it's not too bad. These FPGAs are designed to run at warm temperatures and dissipate enough heat out the back. So this has actually got two rather large batteries in. It's got two 5,000 milliamp hour batteries, so you've got about 6 or 7 hour runtime on this. In a production version, you would probably slim that down because you may not need quite as much. And you'd want it to be a little bit lighter and a little bit more ergonomic. But yeah, the general idea was really just to kick off some discussions with the community, really, and just to see whether this is something that people would like to see explored, because at the moment it's got a number of smaller PCBs which could all be integrated into one. The display could be integrated a little bit more heavily. And then the choice of whether you use a DE10, which this has still got, but it's a slightly modified DE10. So a lot of the high components, a lot of the tall components have just been taken off. So there's no Ethernet connector. Some of the switches are gone. And anything that's more than about 5 millimeters tall has been removed or disabled. So it doesn't disable any functionality from the MiSTer platform, and allows the multi-system as a handheld to run all of the cores that you would have as well.
Yeah.
So,
if you really wanted to get online, you've got the USB port still at the top, so you can pop in a Wi-Fi dongle, things like that. But none of this is set in stone. The button layout, the D-pad, the screen, this is all subject to change, and it's very much a prototype. And it's great that we've developed it this far. You've done a great job on it. And as we did on Twitter, where it got a tremendous response and we got lots of feedback, we'd like to ask you, what would you like to see in your perfect MiSTer handheld? Think about the controls, think about the button layout. Are analog sticks important to you? What systems would you want to run on it? An idea we've been thinking about is perhaps a dock. So if you're going to go to the expense of buying something like this, and of course, in the size of runs that we do and the cost of FPGAs and things like that at the moment, it wouldn't be a cheap investment, would it?
No.
So you'd want to get the most out of it. So perhaps a dock would be a nice idea where you can use it as a handheld for the handheld systems and the consoles that work really well in that form factor. And then perhaps you could dock it and it appears on your big telly and you can plug in a keyboard and use the computers and things like that. So we're thinking about all of these things, but we really value and want to hear your input. So hit the comments section with all of your feedback. I see you fired it up there.
Yeah, I've just got just quickly fired up the Atari Lynx core because it's quite fun to just run that. It is a little bit inspired on the Atari Lynx. Anyone that's out there wondering why it's called Multisystem Handy, well, do a bit of Googling, you'll figure out why that is. So yeah, it's it can do all of the cores that run handhelds. So all of the Lynx has got various systems, and you can even run it in a portrait mode. So you've got clacks on there, which is quite nice to be able to run in a portrait. A lot of cores actually are not 4x3, so that's why I wanted to actually carry on using a 16:9 screen. And they're, to be honest, a little bit easier to get hold of. You can get them in some really nice high resolutions and some really good color depths. Even OLEDs, that's a possibility, but it just depends on whether or not people would want that extra functionality and the look and feel of the extra depth that you get from an OLED screen. So yeah, none of this is set in stone. We've had some really great conversations with people saying, "Oh, why did you do this? Why did you do that?" We haven't done anything. It's just a prototype to gets the conversation going really about this type of thing, and it'd be nice to see other people also thinking about what they would like in a system like this.
And you have retained the magnetic bezel for 4x3 on this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
prototype.
so you can just snap on a little bezel. It's just got some little magnets on there, and that's really nice if you've got sort of the Genesis core, which is a more of a 4x3 finish, and that just helps to finish it off and allows you that flexibility as well, and doesn't look too chunky once you've even got the bezel on.
Would it take much to add that really nice Lynx function of flipping the screen? So if you're left-handed.
Oh yes, yeah. Quite a few people have said, if you had the buttons laid out so you could use it left-handed, right-handed, and up one way or up the other way, that would also be something that would probably be well worth considering, I think, in something that you're going to want to run, a wide collection of cores, consoles, handhelds, all sorts of different things. So I think, it's a really interesting device. And to be fair, since I got this finished at Easter. I designed it back in August, and I've been teasing Neil about it for some time, and finally got it finished in Easter. Since I've done that, I've really used this as my main source, of playing around and trying out new cores. I've tried the 32X core on it and the PSX core as well, which has been fun to try out. So, and I've chosen to do that on the handheld rather than on the main system in the last few weeks. So it's been really good just exploring that and seeing how it works.
Great.
Yeah.
So we'd value your feedback. Richard, you're going to carry on working on that, aren't you? And as and when it develops and we've got more to show you, we'll keep sharing it with you. We'll see if it gets to the point of being a product.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that might require some more investment. So even, it may not be viable to 3D print that. It may actually make more sense to do that as a machined aluminium or something that can retain the quality and the rigidity and also help with the cooling and everything else you need. So there's a few things to think about, but yeah, it's got a long way to go before we can show something that would be manufacturable in a sensible form. And of course, we still have that problem with the DE10s. We could buy those. We could do the slight bit of manufacturing to cut them down in size and use them as a module for this. But that all depends on whether or not we can actually buy them. So, yeah.
So there you go. Who would have thought 6 months ago we would be sat here saying, here are these add-ons. Here's potentially a handheld system of the future, JAMMA, Slices. I mean, so much has happened, and I'm personally really proud of the project and where we've got to with it. And I hope those of you who have got the system have enjoyed it. If you're not even thinking of getting the system, I hope you're enjoying just seeing us go through this journey and bringing this to market, and you can contribute your ideas to the whole project. Richard, of course, thank you for all the hard work that you put into this.
No, that's all right. Yeah, this was always going to be a collection of products that we had to evolve over time. So it wasn't just going to be a one thing. We always knew we needed cartridges, add-ons, expansions, and then, who knows, the next generation maybe. We've had some really interesting conversations with people in the community, Bob included from Retro RGB, and really that gets all the ideas flowing for people that are generating cores, generating hardware preservation technology based on FPGAs. And for us, that's really something we get very, very excited about here.
Yeah, and if anyone out there wants us to be involved in their own conversations and throw thoughts and ideas about anything to do with the MiSTer project, our door is wide open, so please come and chat to us.
Yeah, very much.
As always, thank you so much for watching. We hope you're enjoying the project. If you're waiting on one, it will be in batch 2. It will be shipped very soon. Beyond that, hopefully we'll have lots in stock for you in about 8 weeks' time, around about then, and you can pick one up for yourself. And we hope you enjoy what we're doing. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.